What's up guys, it's Joe here, aka History Hobbit. Got a really funny video for you today, so stick around and I guarantee by the end of this, you're gonna be cracking up. I find that history is often presented in a really dull and boring way. The people who wrote our history textbooks just edited out all the good bits and just left us with some of the dull moments, but that's not actually how things happened. History is full of weird moments, of bloopers, so today we're gonna look at 10 hilarious historical moments. Number 10, an embarrassing speech. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter made a trip to Poland, and he had some, shall we say, mishaps with his translator. In a speech, Carter stated that he wanted to know Polish people's desires for the future. This was misinterpreted as Carter desiring Poland sexually. In the same speech, the interpreter made some other mistakes, saying that the president had left the United States never to return, and that Carter was happy to grasp Poland's private parts. With the Cold War raging through the 1970s, you gotta wonder if these mistakes were intentional. Or maybe the Cold War wasn't the only thing raging. That wasn't the end of it either. Later in that trip, Carter got a new translator, thank goodness, and when he made a toast at the state banquet, the interpreter refused to say anything. It turned out later that the new guy couldn't understand Carter, so he opted to say nothing. Number 9. The rat lawsuit. In the late Middle Ages, rats wreaked havoc on Europe. A French farmer in particular was very frustrated after a pack of rats ate his supply of barley for the winter. He decided the best course of action was to sue the rats. The rats were assigned a lawyer and the trial began. Now, obviously the rats didn't show up for their court date. I mean, it would have been really weird if they did. The rats' lawyer argued that they all lived in different places, so their court appointment might not have reached them. The judge agreed, and the trial was rescheduled. Naturally, the rats failed to show up for their second court date as well, surprise, surprise, so the lawyer then argued that it was daytime, and cats were out and about, and the rats would be unable to travel safely with so many predators out there. The judge excused the defendants from the appearance in court, and the rats were acquitted. Number 8. An elite ghostwriter. When George Washington became president, he asked James Madison to write a letter to Congress for him. Washington wasn't a great writer, and he knew that Madison was excellent with words, so he asked him to do the job. Impressed with the letter, Congress responded to it, but they too enlisted Madison to write their note. Now, you would think that would have been the end of it, but no. Washington sent a response to Congress, which they in turn also responded to again. Madison wrote all of those as well, so in total, he wrote 4 letters to himself. Number 7. A disastrous race. The 1904 Olympic Marathon in St. Louis was a chaotic and hilarious performance. First of all, the course was extremely dusty, and breathing in all of that dust caused a multitude of problems for the athletes. One of the runners was hospitalized after dust tore his esophagus and stomach lining. Besides that, the organizer of the race wanted to test the effects of dehydration, so he purposely withheld water from the contestants. The guy who finished first, Fred Lors, suffered terrible cramping during the race and was picked up by a car that drove him to the finish. He jumped out and jogged across the line, confusing people into thinking he'd actually won. The second place finisher, Thomas Hicks, had injected himself with a concoction of rat poison, egg whites, and brandy as some weird performance enhancer. He collapsed shortly after crossing the line. The fourth place finisher, Felix de Soto, was a Cuban national who had raised the money to attend the games by running across the entire length of Cuba. He gambled away all his money upon arriving in the US and showed up in dress clothes, which was all he had left. Luckily though, another competitor cut his pants into shorts with a knife. Midway through the race, De Soto ate some roadside apples for a little pick-me-up, but unfortunately they turned out to be rotten, which made him really sick. He slept off the illness before finishing the race. The funniest thing was, amidst all this chaos, the third place finisher, Arthur Newton, just kind of ran normally. If this video is making you laugh, please give it a like and subscribe to History Hobbit. Let's get back to it. Number 6. An unfortunate disguise. In World War I, the Germans had an idea to take one of their old passenger liners, slap some guns on it, and dress it up like the RMS Carmania, a British Navy warship. The plan actually worked pretty well until by sheer coincidence, the German vessel came across the real Carmania at sea. The crew of the Carmania figured out the trick almost immediately and opened fire on the imposter, eventually sinking it. Now, the best part is, a nearby German ship actually heard the distress call, but when they showed up, they were unable to determine which ship was which, so they just turned around and left. Uh-oh! Number 5. The first human flight. In the year 1005, an English monk built himself a pair of wings. He climbed a tower and jumped off it, and amazingly, he actually glided for over 200 meters. The headwind was intense though, and the monk panicked, causing him to veer off to the side and crash into a wall. He survived the crash, but broke both his legs and had a limp for the rest of his life. He figured he would have been better off if he'd made himself a tail in addition to the wings. I'm not so sure about that. Number 4. A bizarre assassination attempt. Through the 1960s, the CIA had some utterly strange plans to assassinate Fidel Castro. Top intelligence officials devised a strategy to use Castro's love of scuba diving against him. They planned to hide explosives inside a large seashell painted with funky colors to lure the attention of the ocean-loving communist. Around the same time, the CIA also planned to spray his broadcast studio with an LSD-like chemical, contaminate his diving suits with a fungus, and dust his shoes with a special kind of salt that would have made his iconic beard fall out. Now, it's a little known fact that the CIA in the 1960s was actually run by Wile E. Coyote. Number 3. Sinful sneezing. In the 17th century, Pope Urban VII felt that sneezing was too similar to orgasms, so he banned the sale of tobacco, which he thought induced sneezing. First of all, what kind of sneezes was this guy having? I mean, come on. Who doesn't love a good sneeze, especially after you have one of those fake outs where you think you're gonna sneeze, but it doesn't happen? But close to sex? I don't know about that. Number 2. The Undercover mix-up. In 2007, a group of Detroit police officers posing as drug dealers went to a house to try and make a bust. They met 2 buyers there who happened to be undercover officers from another precinct. More officers showed up and things escalated to the point where both groups were fighting each other. It honestly sounds like something Bugs Bunny conjured up. After the incident, Detroit Police Chief James Craig said it was probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. Number 1. Stop before you start. John Joseph Merlin was excited to debut his newly invented roller skates at a fancy party. He put on the blades in a fancy costume before skating around the ballroom while playing a violin. Although well known as an inventor and a musician, Merlin was terrible at skating. He couldn't control his speed or direction and crash landed into a huge and expensive mirror. He destroyed it and his violin, injuring himself in the process. I'm really sorry, Mr. Merlin, but the image of you smashing into an $100,000 mirror and lying on the ground in a pile of broken glass and violin pieces is just way too funny. I hope you're okay though. Well, there you have it. Let me know in the comments which event you found the funniest. And if this video made you laugh, please share it with your friends and follow me on social media. All the links are in the description below. I'll see you next time.